Hey guys, it's Shard, and as Pike is about to explain, I was extremely busy this year. Whoa. Uh, yeah, so it was my birthday, and I've been backed up with schoolwork. I'm transitioning jobs, etc., etc. So Pike took the reins on this one, and he did a banger job. There's also going to be no animations when it comes to the YouTube video this week. I'm sorry about that. Like, I did not even get a rim animation made. I'm having to redo my schedule completely due to the new job. But thank you for the patience. Make sure you give Pike all your loving affection, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks, okay? All right, Pike, take it away.
All right. So, Shard, if you're seeing this, I tried the first one, but I just kind of got stuck saying and so we're giving this a second go. Um, Turns out I'm meant to just be the person who comes in with funny quips and run a whole episode. So there you go. That's the conclusion that I've come to today. So we are going to start in a minute here. I'm going to find my little spot and sit down. We're going to record it out. So hopefully this goes pretty good. All right. So starting to record in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Atlas occasionally. If you're wondering why I'm doing the intro, it's because this is going to be a solo Pike episode. Shard is a little busy with his real life stuff, and so I'll be recording this one solo. So if you notice that the recording quality is poo poo ass shit, it's because I don't exactly know what I'm doing. Shard normally operates most of this shit, and I really just kind of come in and say funny shit, and then I leave and don't do anything else. But obviously, excuse me. But obviously, this will be all me today. So hopefully, this doesn't sound like complete doo doo ass shit. But we'll see. We'll see how we go. Give it our best shot here. So. This episode was supposed to be episode 4. It was supposed to be released right after the episode on Shard's lore. It was supposed to be the second part. That was my lore, and we recorded the original recording literally back to back after we recorded Shard's, but the audio corrupted. We only had like 2 minutes of it. So I'm re-recording that today. It's obviously had 2 episodes since then, the collaboration with Murford and the collaboration with Tyr and Astrius, both of which are fantastic episodes in my opinion, but definitely glad to finally be getting this one out. We've only got a couple more left before release. I think we do one every 2 weeks, and release is in about 3 months. So I think we only have probably 4 to 6 more episodes before release. So really, we're getting close, guys. I mean, it's I'm recording this on the last day of August. It's almost the last day of November when release comes. So we're definitely getting there. Which after waiting so long, I know it still feels ages away, but we are truly getting pretty close. But anyway, so the point of this episode was to highlight my lore, and obviously it was kind of meant to be Shard would ask me some questions and I'd kind of answer them, but it'll kind of be me running through an explanation because I don't really have anybody here to question me. So hopefully I can present it a little better than I did last time because I don't think I did a super great job in the original recordings. So, for those of you who've been around Atlas for a number of years, you will remember that I did post lore. I have actually posted lore. I posted, I want to say 5 or 6 little lore posts back in the day. I think like 2018-ish. And this was when I was with my First Nation, the Beer Brethren, and I couldn't play a whole lot on the server. So what I would do kind of on my transit to and from the mostly sports, I would just kind of write my little lore posts. But the thing was, I was, 13, 14, had no real writing experience or, writing education. I mean, I did for factual works, but not so much for fictional. So it it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but it wasn't. I'm not even gonna say it wasn't awful. It was pretty fucking awful. But I think I wrote a little bit of lore for the nation. Then I wrote a little bit of lore for my first character, who was aptly named Pike. Super creative at this point in my life as well. And kind of just the general story was I was like this old alcohol brewer, and I kind of started this nation of alcohol brewers, and we became really famous because at this point, a lot of what I did on servers was I used the brewing plugin, which is to make alcohol in game, for those of you who are not familiar with it. And so I really wanted to translate that into my lore and my nation and all that. And I did all those things, just not very well. Um, and I mean, I don't think I think a lot of the stuff I wrote got revamped by other people later on, and my lore I've just kind of I dumped it. I think it was supposed to be 5 or 6 parts, and I think I ended after 2 or 3. Um, but then I left the Beer Brethren, and they left the server pretty much entirely. And when real well, there was for those of you who haven't been around a long time, this is not the first dev period that many of us have been through. There was another much shorter dev period, I think like late 2018 to early 2019. It was a couple months long, and I came out of that dev period not really having any friends per se on the server. So I ended up joining Mezzle, which was literally anybody that I knew at that point was in Mezzle. And I made my second character, who's Anna Sokolov, which it's a Russian name. I know I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but I don't really know how to pronounce it, so don't hate me. And I never actually posted any lore about her. Shard and I have discussed that he was working on a lot of lore stuff at the time, and so I do have quite a bit that I've written for her, just kind of like general stuff about her, because he wanted to write and include her, and he did include her in one post, which was his food fight post, little mini story. And it's the only time that Anna has ever been posted on the forums publicly. I've never actually made a post with her yet, even though I do have several documents written of storyline. I never posted it because I kind of wanted to be a little bit more sure about it. So yeah, that's just kind of where I've been for the last 3 4 years now, is kind of stuck with this character that I've never officially used, and there's never really been anything put out about her. And I'm really hoping that this release I can finally get some stuff out and kind of get a storyline going. I'd like to do a lot more lore. It's something where obviously a lot of our nations that I've been in have had kind of this in-game lore and kind of vibe, but we haven't really posted anything on the forum. Or we did, but it was all kind of separately, or not as much as we could have. Insula never really posted much, if anything, even though we had a lot of storyline and lore with obviously like our goddess and stuff, which we're very famous for. Excuse me. Excuse me again. So even though we had a lot of lore, none of it was ever posted. And I do want to change that this map. And we've done a lot of discussion behind the scenes and how it's all going to fit together. And we're still definitely a long way from all being completed and eye to eye with it, but we are making good progress so far. But so the majority of what I want to discuss is obviously my character Anna, because Pike I think he's canonically dead. I think I've decided he's dead. He's extremely old in original Atlas lore, and then obviously we're several years in the future now. So I think we're just gonna cut him. So but so deciding to go with a female character the second time around, it was kind of just a random decision. There really was no there's really no creepy-ish intent behind it. It was just kind of like there's a lot of male characters on Atlas because obviously there's a lot of guys who play Atlas, and there's not a whole lot of female characters. And I really wanted to make a female character because I wanted them to be Pike's kid. So a little spoiler, Anna is Pike's kid. But I didn't just want to do like a, X son of Y kind of storyline, because I feel like it just feels more boring in my head, which it probably really isn't. And it just feels that way to me, but I just didn't really want to do it that way. So I don't really have to fucking justify it. And so Anna, gets adopted out. There's gonna be some more backstory with Pike. I want to finish his backstory, and kind of what I want to do is give Pike a little bit more mythology kind of backstory. Like, you don't really know what's true and what's false. Like, he's someone that a lot of people have heard of, but where he's actually been and what he's actually did is kind of as much myth as it is fact. And so, for whatever reason that my little mythology will contain, Pike has to give up Anna, but he does so secretly. Just kind of dropped on a doorstep sort of thing. It's not going to work exactly like that, but it's that sort of thing, just a random adoption. Don't really know who is dropping them off or who lost the kid, whatever. And so Anna is taken to a family of hunters in Yukrovia, hunters and trappers in Yukrovia, who hunt and trap for furs to sell in, obviously, Yukrovia town. And so after a while, she inherits kind of the family property / hunting cabin out in the Highlands. And she just kind of continues the hunting and trapping legacy. And so kind of her story begins with just kind of like a day in her life kind of thing towards the end of the season. Because obviously, for those of you who don't know, trapping season generally occurs in the winter, because it's time when animals have the thickest and heaviest coats to keep them warm. And so generally people wear fur clothing to stay warm. And so animals are generally harvested during the winter. As you come out of winter, animals start to shed their heavier coats of winter for lighter summer coats. And so it's a time when many people just give up and go back to town and sell their furs, because it would be lower quality product anyway. And so this is kind of the time that we find Anna in. Is the season's ending, she's getting the last of her furs, and then she's packing up for her kind of trip, her spring trip to Yukrovia, to sell her winter stock and see her parents and get, buy her supplies and just kind of do everything she needs to spend another year out in the wilderness, sort of thing. And so, you get a glimpse into this kind of just quiet, very solo sort of life, and going to kind of have this very peaceful, flowing description, just kind of this, it's almost this boredom of the characters sort of thing. And then we're going to see her kind of pack up her horse and head to Yukrovia. Due to whatever, she kind of arrives at Yukrovia a little bit later in the day, plans to stay the night, or probably several nights. But what she finds is smoke rising in the distance, kind of she can see against the sunset, because she's arrived at the time when the Vantians are taking over, or kind of shortly after, where everything is still kind of smoldering and burning. And this was just kind of to line it up with a period of Atlas lore, which probably would make more sense if we now weren't several Atlas years in the future, but we'll see kind of how that all plays out. So anyway, she finds Yukrovia attacked and destroyed, and many of its members and citizens killed, its leader killed, just kind of destroyed as a city. And so she cuts the cart off the horse and starts running with the horse. But Vantian mounted archers are waiting on top of the hill, and she kind of gets into this little archery battle with them, and she thinks that they all miss her, but they ended up hitting the horse. And so, the horse is going to get removed from the story, so to speak. And from there, it kind of just becomes Anna's sort of solo adventure, where she kind of swears to be a little sort of vigilante against the Vantians. Starts the formation of a little band of kind of thieves and robbers / kind of mercenaries sort of thing, that kind of ride around the plains of Dunsmore and attack Vantian supply bands. Obviously, Dunsmore being where Insula settled last map, and so this is kind of meant to be a callback to that. So this is kind of meant to be the first of Anna's kind of chunk of storyline. I think I have several kind of chunks of this storyline planned out, and it's how I sort of divide her storylines, so to speak. So the first chunk is kind of just like her origin, in the early founding of Insula. And then you have a lot more of Insula's sort of shenanigans um, as we recruit people and we kind of form into a larger group um, where eventually we're not so much just soldiers and mercenaries, but we are kind of a clan, groups of families and individuals. And, there are children and there are women and there are kind of just this whole sort of culture forming within Insula as people who are displaced by the Vantians and the war in general. Um, and so at this point, Insula turns to be more of a not really like a kingdom, but more of a nation, I guess that's probably the right word, to be nation. Um, and so yeah, this kind of the second story is about the formation of the nation of Insula, and it's kind of where we get a lot of glimpses into Insula history, because Insula has existed now for going on 4 years as a group. We haven't obviously been active super all that time, but we've existed a long time. We do have a lot of history and inside jokes and things that have happened. I want to recognize that in our lore and also be able to kind of write in stuff going forward too. Um, and so for Insula lore, what's kind of going to happen is I'm going to write like the basic storyline of the nation's formation from my character's perspective. And so anytime anybody else who's in the nation or wants to join the nation or, joins the nation later, they can write their character's perspective wherever they want to fit into the storyline. Even if you come later, but you want to say that your character was one of the original kind of band of vigilantes, you can do that. But you can write it from your point of view and then build your story from there. And so I like that we kind of have this basic storyline, but it's something that people can come into and write their own versions of, or, slightly change. And it doesn't really change the storyline. It's just saying, hey, this is my perspective on it, or this is kind of how I imagined it, or this is how it was going in my little world during this time. And then people can go forward and say, okay, this is where I was during this time in Insula and this time in Insula. And it gives people a lot of options for integrating themselves wherever they want to be into the story and write their future and their past however they see fit. Which I think is really cool, and I think it lends itself well to, excuse me, recruiting more people in the future. I think that's always been sort of a very rigid part of writing lore, is this is exactly how the story happened with these people in this place, and then if people join later, it's so we kind of have to shoehorn them in here in the timeline. But with Insula, you don't necessarily have to do that. If you want to shoehorn yourself in at the correct spot in the timeline, you can do that. But it's all meant to be different POVs and just kind of a different perspectives on how life was happening in the nation at this time and whenever you want it to be. And so I think that's one of the more interesting parts about it. And so that being said, I will have a couple sort of storylines within the Insula quote unquote nation as the leader or one of the leaders of it, because I am obviously the leader of the nation, one of the leaders of the nation in reality, and also the founder of the nation, all that. So obviously I do have an importance to the storyline, not to brag, but I do generally and genuinely have an importance to the storyline. And so I want to have certain storylines where, what it's like to be the leader of a group and like the responsibility that you feel and the stresses. And that's kind of what I want to do with my characters, make like a much longer ongoing storyline, do a lot of character development, kind of hit on a lot of topics and things that probably aren't often explored, if ever, in Atlas lore. I found a lot of Atlas lore to more just kind of be an explanation of events that happen in game, or just one individual just writing what they want about their character for a couple parts, and then they kind of just drop it, or they get bored and they move on to another character, which is all fine. Everybody can do what they want, but it's not really what I want to do. I want to hold on to this character and do this over a long running thing and see a lot of different storylines and character growth and address what life would actually be like in many of these situations, because I think, if you are the leader, first of all, if you are kind of almost a hermit, who now is thrown into a leadership position in a very vulnerable group of people. That's a weird sense of responsibility and probably pride, but also anxiety. And I think there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in that, that just writing, I am doing this and this is what happened, like writing a very factual sort of lore background doesn't touch on, you know what I mean? And so I think the benefits of doing a longer thing is being able to go more in depth and not being afraid to cut the storyline up into just a lot of chunks of lore because you're going into that detail. And that's something that you can do when you write on the same character for months and years, as opposed to I wrote like the same 3 pieces of lore in like a week or 2, and then I didn't really touch the character again because it got too complicated. And I want to do other storylines. Like once I do a couple where I'm the leader of Insula, I think I want to do some where Anna kind of gives the leadership over to someone else or like a counselor or something, and she goes and does what she wants to do. Like she kind of has realized, I like this, but I've decided that my purpose is this. And I want her to kind of go back to the different areas of the continent and try and just survive and follow her dreams without, while also trying to remain hidden, probably as a war criminal, at least to some of the NPC groups. And just the storyline of that and following her dreams and maybe trying to figure out her heritage, which is more of where like Pike's storyline may spur in as she goes around and talks to people about him, as there may be myths in different places. Or, you know, I'd like her to actually find his old journals eventually, which is where it will kind of all culminate into a larger storyline with Pike. And again, just kind of doing that half fact, half fiction, you know, thing where it's kind of these very exaggerated stories and people can kind of pick out the truth and the lie as they see fit. You know, it's sort of not a pick your own ending sort of thing, but kind of a pick your own interpretation of the storyline more. And I think that's great. You know, I think that would be really cool. And I'd like her to I want her to kind of pursue the flora and fauna of Athera, and I want her to kind of be this like botanist slash naturalist, and I want to do like these nature, kind of like the Discoverer journals and like the drawings and all that were done like in the early Americas, like James John Audubon and a lot of the people who, you know, went and discovered different plants and animals and it made these beautiful drawings. And I want to do some things like that and kind of describe Atlas's flora and fauna, because it's not something that we get to see a lot of in the official lore, and just kind of do these fun little lore side projects that obviously are not canon. None of this is canon Atlas lore, just being player written lore, but just kind of a fun little thing to do, writing of different sort of species and history and all that. And also maybe documenting Atlas like mythology. I've always had some cool myths that I've always kind of wanted to write up, like the hills in Dunsmore are the result of the Vantian god Torvald using his hammer, because he typically used a hammer as his weapon in official lore. I don't know if it's his weapon or his tool. I don't really know that much about Atlas lore, but for those who've been around long enough to play with relics, there was a relic called Torvald's hammer. And so I've always just kind of assumed it was a weapon, but it may have been a crafting tool. I don't really know. But anyway, what I was going to write is the hills in Dunsmore, the spires or whatever, were kind of like the result of Torvald playing whack-a-mole or something, or like fighting some animal under the earth. And every time he'd hit, another one of those spikes would come. Like there's these fun kind of storyline mythology things that I'd like to do. And obviously Atlas has a lot of different cultures on it. You know, you got the Pure Lakers and the Vantians and the Shen, obviously, but then you also have like, you have the pirates and you have like the Valdercall, and you have like all these different groups who also might have their own mythology and things. And now we also obviously have a new continent to kind of write about. And I think there's a lot of interesting things to do there from a mythology perspective. And I'd like to do a storyline about Insula's religion, because obviously that's always been a huge part of Insula. Our goddess, who is made, it's a hilarious story. Basically, Briam was trying to design a flag for Insula, and I said that his flag ended up looking like a fat little girl. And I showed this to Ada, and Ada drew up kind of the first art depiction of this Insula character, who we later ended up calling Ina-chan, in sort of a joking, cringy anime way. And yeah, it became kind of part of our religion thing, and like we have like a whole bunch of emojis and like memes about it, and it's part of the. There's actually, I think, 2 emojis for Insula Chan in the official Atlas Discord, and like there's just a lot going on. And so I want to do that, and I want to do a storyline about the religion, and I want to make it similar to kind of in the Kane Chronicles, which is written by Rick Riordan, who wrote the Percy Jackson series. It's the kind of the Egyptian version of that, the Percy Jackson series. It touches on Egyptian mythology, and in one of the books, there is this hospital in the underworld where all of the gods who are forgotten about kind of go to be forgotten and fade away and die. And the power of the gods is linked directly to the amount of people who remember them and respect them and all that. And so I'd like to do kind of a storyline like that, where we go around and we find these kind of like forgotten gods from old Atlas cultures and stories, and it might fit into my mythology storyline a little bit. And so, I want to have a lot of these interconnected, very kind of out there storylines that, like, yes, some of them will involve my character, or I'll use my character to lead into them. Like, oh, hey, like Anna is going on this side journey to find, Pike's journals, and that's how Pike's name will come out. Oh, Anna's deciding she really wants to start documenting the species as she travels, and that's how this comes out. Anna's diving into mythology, and then she starts uncovering some of these things, and that leads into the mythology, and it also leads into the religion storyline. And so I want to use her as a tool to lead into more storylines, as well as just being a well-developed character. And so I'm really excited for a lot of that. I know it sounds like a lot if you're just listening to me ramble on about it, and it is a lot, but it's kind of what I'd like to do. I don't know. I think it'll be fun to touch on a lot of those different things, and like I want to do like a romance storyline with someone else's character. I want to actually like collaborate with someone and write like a romance thing. Like I don't want the characters to end up together. I want it to kind of be like a fleeting romance thing where like you run into each other and you click and you click and you click, and then you just know it's not going to work, and you have to make that hard decision. Like there is a lot that can be said for those kinds of experiences with individuals in our lives as well. Not even just, this is my wife of, 30 years, and that's lovely. But like a lot of times, especially like when you're young, you get a lot of those kind of just fleeting romances or interactions too. And they're a lot more common in sort of these historical writings and fantasy and situations. And I assume they were a lot more common in that time as well, because now it's gonna be like, oh, I can get your number. Okay, I can talk to you whenever, So I think that'd be interesting, and maybe do it as almost like a love letter kind of thing, or do it as a mixed like interaction love letter kind of thing, like a documentation of letters and all this. And I want it to just ultimately not work out, which is going to sound like weird, but I want this romance to fail for the sake of story. And so yeah, like there's so much I want to do, and like I'm starting to really see the possibilities with it, and the possibility to kind of use my character as a step forward into many of these things. But um that's true. I mean, that's about it. I mean, it sounds like a lot of rambling. Obviously, I don't have as much, placenta and shit in my lore as Shard does, but I think mine's one that really has to be kind of written to be seeing the interesting parts of it, instead of just, Aaron suckling Long's ex girl lover's unborn child fetus placenta thing. I don't remember, but um, and so yeah, I don't really think there's anything I can say at this point that's not just kind of mindless rambling. So I'm gonna just kind of start to wrap it up. Um, I'm really excited to write lore this time around. I hope a lot more people do. It's something that we've seen a couple people on Atlas who are very gifted with lore and write a lot of it and have written a lot. But I think everybody should, write a couple pieces. I think it's super fun. And even if you're not super great at it, like I'm not super great at it, but it's still fun to give it a try and kind of put some stuff out there and put some storyline out there and expand the Atlas world in your own fun little non-canon way. And I would really encourage everyone to consider it. You know, hopefully hearing about Shard and I, maybe you've been inspired, you know, and even if all you do is you just kind of write a lore story for events as they happen to you, that's okay too. And it's really cool to kind of see maybe what might just kind of be a dry server event written into a story. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, oh, you know, like my server went to war with this nation and we won. Like, that's fairly cut and dry from a feature perspective. You know, like you guys went and you guys fought and one person won. You know, like from an actual gameplay perspective, yes, it's exciting, but it's rather cut and dry. Like this happened, this happens. You know, you can write that into an epic story, like the war of whatever between whoever and whoever, and like the events leading up to it, and this and that. And I think that's the possibility for stuff that's just really cool. That really hasn't been super explored. I mean, it has by some people, but it hasn't on a larger scale. And so just kind of what I recommend people to do, you know, is pursue a lot of this. If you need any help with it, obviously, you know, Shard and I are not, I mean, I'm not as good as he is at writing, but we both are writers and we both have done lore work before. Or, you know, talk to like Cody or, you know, or Io or the different elders who are involved in the story team. You know, obviously they might have some good ideas for you, or read up on old Atlas lore. There's a lot of it out there to kind of discover, both official from the elders or like on the wiki, the old Atlas wiki, or the old player lore when we're able to see the forums again, and the in-game lore too. I'm understanding that there's going to be a lot more lore in game, a lot more storyline, a lot more of this going on, and so it's a great time to get into writing lore if that's something you're even remotely interested in. But yeah, this is kind of my thing. Is I guess to summarize it, I want to do Anna's origin, the formation of Insula, kind of Insula growing, and then shoot off into a solo storyline that leads into those cool spin-off storylines. Shard, I think the only really thing I have to update on his storyline is he has made a new character, officially, which we discussed at the end of his lore episode, but it is official now, so congratulations, Shard, on that. And I won't say anything more about it because it is his character, but just want to say congratulations to him. He'll be working with a brand new character this time around, and really excited for his stuff and really excited for the new server stuff. So, yeah, I think there's probably a lot of good lore coming down the pipe, which it is and isn't my thing. It's not really the main reason I play Atlas, and it doesn't, you know, it's not as exciting to me as it is a Shard, but it's still something that I can appreciate as a fun little role play aspect of the server. And yeah, it's cool enough, you know. It's pretty legit, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I don't really have a whole hell of a fucking lot to say. Yeah, without my little co-host here, there's no questions, and I feel like I've explained this all pretty okay. You know, it's not super exciting until I actually write it, until all these things kind of happen, but hopefully it's still good enough to tide you guys over until the next episode, which I think we're just going to do a couple episodes with Shard and I, which should be very exciting coming up. We've obviously just had some great episodes released. Definitely check out the last episode with Astrius and Tyr. It's a great episode. We dive into a lot of what's upcoming and get to know them a little better, which was super fun for me, because I don't always get to interact with a lot of these people, and it was cool to interact with them. So definitely go back and watch that one. We talk about boob and butt, and we talk about incest at one point, and we talk about a lot of fun Atlas features, agriculture, custom Atlas agriculture, as many of you may know, that's kind of my little thing, in game and real life. I love that shit in real life. And Anna will also probably have an agriculture storyline. But I think for anybody who actually knows me, that was almost a given. But for those of you who don't, that will exist, and it will probably go hand in hand with the little naturalist storylines. So there's another one I kind of forgot because it's just kind of very obvious to me. But yeah, just kind of rambling at this point. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Maybe we'll do more solo episodes occasionally in the future, as availabilities will differ, especially after launch and especially after, life gets back into full swing for Shard and I, with his school, me working and trying to start businesses and stuff. Him also working, obviously, but there's a lot going on for both of us outside of games and recording, and there will definitely be a lot going on inside of games and recording as we are trying to coordinate the the Atlas release Insula All Nighter, which is I think we currently have at least 3 people committed who are going to try to do the All Nighter when Atlas releases, and we're going to try and get a couple more. So that's kind of the only sort of Insula plan I will divulge right now is that it's a group of us planning to do an all-nighter the night it releases, and just absolutely fucking smash out nation setup. So very excited for that. Other fun Insula news: building is almost completed for now, which obviously doesn't really affect any of you, but yeah, that's really all I can share at this point. Everything else is still kind of top secret. As we head into the last couple months, we're just trying to cut up our loose ends and get everything tied down for launch. So hopefully you guys are doing the same. Looking forward to seeing a lot of you, what you guys do and playing with you and getting to know a lot of you again, because I've only really played with about half of you. I think at this point, a lot of you joined after I left during this development period, and I've talked to many of you, but it'd be good to get to play with you and know a lot of you guys more personally. So anyway, after kind of doing a Midwest goodbye to myself now 3 times, I think it's time to actually sign off. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and hopefully we can get back to doing some more recording episodes together soon. But this won't be good enough to get you guys by until we can do that. So thank you guys for listening. And I think I'm just required to do the Atlas occasionally standard awkward bye.